You know, it would have been different if the American Kenny Ortega had handled, you know, had directed. He's a music person, and possibly would have come from a different approach. But as a movie director, he wanted to tell a story, and that's all he knows how to do. And so for me, I think, and that's why you saw the likes of Mr. Bean, you know, the orchestra and a few other things we saw, you know, what we saw in the beginning, you know, and I think that brought out the best of the day, what happened in the beginning, and then how they were able to merge the healthcare, the national, you know, healthcare scheme, you know, the children. Don't forget, Lord Sebastian Coe, who is the chairman of the local organizing committee, you know, did say that this Olympics is about the future, is about the youngsters, is about, you know, inspiring, you know, the future generation. You know, and so even when people were expecting that maybe it was going to, I thought it was going to be the Queen actually, that was going to light the Olympic torch. And when people were expecting a big name, you could say that, you know, some legends, 7 of them, you know, were given the opportunity, the privilege of, you know, nominating 7 young stars, and they looked around, nominated 7 young stars, and they were the ones, you know, that lit the Olympic torch. So, as I said, mixed reactions. You know, if you consider, you know, getting the Queen to be part of the whole production in terms of, you know, how, you know, James Bond, you know, came in, and, you know, all that. So if you consider all that, there were some high moments, there were some low moments, as I said, for me, and then considering that the fact that it was 27 million pounds that was spent, you know, to get all that done, then you realize whether, now the question is that money well spent? That's a big question.
You know, before we come back to the main games of the event, we also saw most of the artists. You just talked about Craig, the Bond actor, Daniel Craig, James Bond, and we saw some bit of people, even about music, Duran, almost all the rock bands that have actually come out of the UK. They were displayed there. The Beatles there.
It's rounding up Sir Paul McCartney.
I'm trying to see how we can take a cue from that, just in case we have any kind of a world event being hosted here in Nigeria, how we can showcase some of those things we have.
We have had too many. Unfortunately, we have bungled them. You know, the only one that looked as if we did something meaningful, maybe because the likes of Professor Wole Soyinka was part of it, was the one, the Koja event. You know, I think the cycling and a few other things were nice, but overall we could have done better. You see, if you consider the funds that was available, you know, if they had spent 27 million pounds and we could see the effects, we could see, you know, I mean, you can't question the money. You can, you know, maybe you can question the artistic direction of, you know, the director, you know, his thinking, what was on his mind. I think he had too many things to bring together. I think within 3 hours, he was meant to tell too many stories, and maybe that, you know, they derailed him a little. Like I said, there was a point where it dragged for too long, especially where you were looking at the evolution and the music evolution. You know, what it was in the 70s, what it was in the 60s, what it was in the 50s, and then Leonard Lewis and all of them, you know, bringing them, you know, showed the Beatles at the point. So if you consider all that, maybe it dragged for too long at some point. But overall, I think artistically, I'm not going to question, you know, Dale Boyle's, you know, direction. I think it was fantastic, but it was maybe just dragged for too long at some point, and it was money well spent. In our own case, you know, you find out that you budget so much money, billions of naira are budgeted for in this kind of events, you know, and then you ask yourself, what do we get out of those events? That is where I'm always worried, you know. And then if you look at it, 3 hours of, you know, lovely pictures, you know, sceneries, you could enjoy. Like I said, we're taking you through many things, you know. But in our own case, you will have more speeches, you know, than some of these things. The president must speak, the vice president must speak, you know, the chairman of this must speak. Look at on that day, the prime minister was somehow, you will even recognize that the deputy prime minister, Nick Clegg, and the prime minister, David Cameron, were right there. They were there. But it all evolved around the president, that is one, the chairman of the local organizing committee, Lord Sebastian Coe, who welcomed everybody. Jack Rhodes, you know, of course, the man who is currently the president of the IOC, you know, also had a speech. And then the Queen declared the whole thing open, and that was it. But in our own case, you have too many speeches. And, you know, we are never organized. And so I think that's the difference. You know, money is never well spent in our own case. And I think in their own case, I think money was well spent.